Beijing for a forum on President Xi Jinping's ambitious project.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in declares Gangwon-do Province sitting on the border with North Korea as the new symbol of peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula.
And South Korea's 4 political parties forge ahead with designating controversial key reform bills as fast-track, despite strong resistance from the main opposition Liberty Korea Party. News Center begins now. Good evening and welcome to Arirang News Center, coming to you live from Seoul. I'm Noah Ram.
And I'm Han Daeun. Thank you for joining us this evening. We begin in Russia. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wrapped up his visit to Vladivostok this afternoon.
He left the Russian city much earlier than expected, cancelling his planned trips to some economic sites. Arirang's Choi Si-young starts us off with more on the possible implications to Kim's early departure.
North Korean leader Kim Jong-un wrapped up his 3-day visit to Russia much earlier than expected, canceling planned economic visits. On Friday, Kim laid a wreath at a monument honoring Russia's unknown soldiers at noon. He then had lunch with the Primorsky Krai regional governor Oleg Kozhemyaku at a restaurant where Kim's father and the North's late former leader Kim Jong-il had visited in 2002. Kim left from Vladivostok station at 3:30, 7 hours earlier than scheduled. Some of Russia's top officials, including Far East Development Minister Alexander Kozlov and Vice Foreign Minister Igor Margolov, saw him off. Kim was originally to leave Friday night after touring around Vladivostok. He was expected to visit Russia's Pacific Navy Fleet headquarters and an oceanarium on Russky Island. He was also to watch a performance at the world-renowned Mariinsky Theater and meet with North Korean students and researchers in Vladivostok. But Kim canceled all these schedules. Experts suggest that the North Korean leader chose to return to Pyongyang quickly after not getting much from his summit with Putin.
This was Kim Jong-un's first visit to Russia, but there were no big achievements from Kim's side because there was nothing to give nor take with Putin in the first place. Russia can secure its interests by resuming the six-party talks, but the North doesn't want to revive the complicated framework of six-party talks. It doesn't have time.
Observers add that realistically, it is a bit difficult for Kim to tour around Vladivostok when Russian President Putin is out of the country. Putin left for Beijing right after a meeting with Kim on Thursday for the One Belt, One Road Forum. Choi Si-young, Arirang News.
North Korea, while reporting about the Kim-Putin summit, has once again placed the blame on the U.S. for the nuclear deadlock. The North Korean Central News Agency reported Friday that Kim Jong-un, during his summit with Russian President Putin, has said that peace and security on the Korean Peninsula depends entirely on Washington's attitude. According to the report, Kim, while assessing the situation on the Korean Peninsula during the extended summit, said it's reached a critical point where things might have to go back to how they were because, quote, the U.S. took a unilateral attitude in bad faith at the Hanoi summit. He also said the North will prepare for any situation. Kim and Putin reportedly discussed ways to promote strategic communication and tactical collaboration to ensure peace and security on the Korean Peninsula and in the region. The report also said Kim invited Putin to visit the North at a convenient time and that Putin readily accepted the invitation. U.S. President Donald Trump, meanwhile, says the U.S., Russia, and China all have to get rid of their nuclear weapons. In an exclusive interview with Fox News on Thursday, local time, the U.S. leader said, quote, "We want to get rid of nuclear weapons." His comments come amid speculations that his administration is eyeing a grand arms control deal with China and Russia. During the interview, Trump also underscored statements made by Russian President Putin that it's great to be able to help Washington with Kim Jong-un and North Korea. Trump added that Chinese President Xi has been a big help at the border between China and North Korea. And staying with the regional developments surrounding North Korea's nuclear issue, amid mixed analysis on Thursday's Kim-Putin summit, many believe the talks showed Pyongyang's change in stance for its future denuclearization talks with the U.S. Experts say North Korea is requesting for something more significant from the U.S. in exchange for its denuclearization steps. Our Lee Ju-yeol explains.
President Putin's press conference after his banquet with Kim Jong-un on Thursday shows a shift in what North Korea is asking for from the U.S.
The North Korean administration wants to denuclearize as well, but is asking for its safety to be guaranteed, and this needs to be assured by international law.
Until the Hanoi summit, what North Korea had asked for in exchange for the Yongbyon nuclear facility was partial sanctions relief. After Hanoi fell apart, the North's Foreign Minister Lee Ju-yeol explained at a surprise press conference that they had thought it'd be too much to ask the U.S. for a security guarantee and for military measures. But in view of the current standstill and Washington's push for a big deal, where all nuclear weapons, missiles, and even weapons of mass destruction are brought to the table, the North, according to experts, had little choice but to counter the request.
For Washington, denuclearization means Pyongyang gets rid of all its weapons. It's only natural that the North would reciprocate and ask the U.S. to remove all the threats it poses to the regime, which include the nuclear umbrella over the peninsula, strategic assets, and even U.S. troops in the south.
And unfortunately, this means the negotiations have gotten tougher.
What could have been easily solved by lifting one or two sanctions or declaring an end to the Korean War has become more complicated because the U.S. naively thought the North would cave into the sanctions. These military measures the North is asking for are not something Washington can accept.
Experts say what the North is arguing is that a denuclearization deal can never be reached if the U.S. continues to ask for a deal of such great scope. So the two should take a step-by-step approach, exchanging denuclearization steps and maybe partial sanctions relief to start building trust first. And once that starts happening, the experts say, is when Putin suggests holding the six-party talks to give the North a guarantee from the world of its security. Lee Ju-yeol, Arirang News.
President Moon Jae-in says the government will actively support Gangwon-do Province in its efforts to build its economy through peace. He said the region has great potential to become the milestone for peace and prosperity in Korea. Our Park Hee-jun has more.
President Moon says Gangwon-do Province will be the new symbol of peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula, vowing to make it the center of a peace-driven economy. The president discussed ways to foster economic growth through peace with government officials and businessmen on Friday as part of its nationwide economic tour. Highlighting that the eastern province was where the so-called Pyeongchang Peace Olympics was held, he also promised to promote tours and festivals at the demilitarized zone. He said he will work to resume tours at Kumgangsan Mountain as well. President Moon also expressed high hopes for connecting the region to Eurasia through railways and making it the logistics hub of Northeast Asia. Progress at the moment is being hindered by international sanctions, but the president called on joint efforts to lay the groundwork for inter-Korean projects for when the sanctions are lifted. He added that the government will invest $5 billion in Gangwon-do by 2030 to build more cultural and welfare facilities, which should improve the lives of residents in border areas. In line with the vision to advance the regional economy through peace is South Korea's Peace Trail projects. The president toured the DMZ hiking trails at the inter-Korean border town of Gosong, one of the 3 symbolic trails set to open Saturday on the one-year anniversary of the Panmunjom inter-Korean summit. It marks the first time the trails, also located in Paju and Cheoron, will be open to the public since the end of the Korean War. Park Hee-jun, Arirang News.
More remains have been found at the site of one of the fiercest battles of the Korean War inside the demilitarized zone. The Defense Ministry said Friday it retrieved 17 more bone pieces from the Arrowhead Ridge site during an excavation and demining project, bringing the total amount of human remains retrieved from the site to 32. It's said for the first time since the project was launched earlier this month, some of the remains are presumed to belong to an entire body. A detailed examination and DNA analysis will be carried out to identify them.
Tomorrow will be a year since the first summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Kim Jong-un. And in their declaration at Panmunjom, they made a number of promises. Our Unification Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee looks into how much of that has been implemented and what remains to be done.
Improving inter-Korean relations, lowering military tensions, and setting lasting peace on the Korean Peninsula. With these as the major pillars, the Panmunjom Declaration stipulated several action plans for South and North Korea. So let's see how these action plans have been carried out over the past year. In August last year, at North Korea's Mount Kumgangsan Resort, Seoul and Pyongyang held a week-long reunions of families separated by the Korean War, the first of its kind in 3 years. It brought together roughly 200 families from South and North Korea who met each other for the first time after the two Koreas' division in 1945. A month later, Seoul and Pyongyang opened a joint liaison office in the Kaesong Industrial Complex. It's the first ever inter-Korean communication channel that runs 24/7. Liaison officers are meeting every day to exchange documents or share notices. The establishment of the contact office was followed by President Moon Jae-in's trip to the North Korean capital for his third summit with Kim Jong-un. Being the first visit by South Korean president to the North in over a decade, the Pyongyang summit led to a military agreement and drew out Pyongyang's promises to dismantle key nuclear and missile facilities. South and North Korea jointly celebrated the 11th anniversary of their 2007 summit agreement on October 4th. They also formed joint teams for a number of international sporting events, including the Asian Games last year. But most importantly, Seoul and Pyongyang took actions to turn the DMZ into a peace zone by, for example, removing guard posts and linking up a cross-border road. However, left unresolved are inter-Korean projects on linking and modernizing railways and roads and declaring an end to the Korean War. The two Koreas conducted basic surveys on railways and roads in the north and at cross-border sections and even held a groundbreaking ceremony, but real construction can't begin unless sanctions are eased. South and North Korea had also hoped to formally declare an end to the Korean War in 2018 to start multilateral talks on signing an official peace treaty, but that never materialized. All in all, the two Koreas succeeded in activating dialogue, expanding interactions, and easing tensions, but progress will have to be made on the denuclearization front to make steps forward in economic cooperation and ending the Korean War. Oh Jung-hee, Arirang News.
So it's been almost 1 year since the geopolitical landscape here on the Korean Peninsula took a major turn. On April 27th last year, the leaders of the two Koreas shook hands and gave each other big hugs, crossing the military demarcation line, warming the hearts of many here in Korea. And since then, we saw rapid developments by regional players surrounding the Korean Peninsula. Now, for a recap of the developments of the Moon administration's peace drive in the region and much more, we have our Shin Se-min now joining us in the studio. So Se-min, we're just a day away from the first anniversary since the historic first summit between the leaders of the two Koreas at the border village of Panmunjom. Any word from the president yet marking the day?
Right, the President Moon Jae-in spent today in Gangwon-do Province, located on the eastern part of the country, also bordering North Korea. And there he said the government will prepare for a future where the Korean Peninsula can open up a new era of peace. And that was from a briefing on Gangwon-do Province's campaign for peace-based regional economic growth. Now, President Moon also promised his efforts for an early resumption of major inter-Korean projects like the tour packages to North Korea's Mount Kumgang, and the South Korean leader said his government will speed up the work to link the 104-kilometer-long railway between the cities of the two Koreas.
Now, the South Korean government has planned a commemorative event to mark the day, which will take place tomorrow at the South Korean territory of the border village of Panmunjom. But North Korea remains unresponsive. North Korea remains silent about the event, despite being notified by the South Korean government that it would take place. So obviously North Korean officials won't be attending the event?
That is what we know so far. I mean, over the past year, we've seen ups and downs on the process of the denuclearization drive by President Moon and But South Korea's stance on engaging with the North to fully complete its denuclearization process has not changed a bit. And with or without the North, South Korea's Unification Ministry says it has chosen to go ahead with the cultural event where artists from South Korea, the U.S., China, and Japan will be performing under the theme of peace in the region.
And that event doesn't seem to be the only peak inside this administration's stance in handling the denuclearization issue. Now, through those, obviously, President Moon Jae-in is continuing to show his strong determination to keep the flame of dialogue alive with North Korea. And the second commander-in-chief is also echoing the president's voice, right?
Right. That's from a meeting yesterday where the presidential chief of staff, Do Young-min, just yesterday cementing that idea of possibly working for another summit between the two Koreas. During a meeting where the South Korea has been working to implement the promises made by the Panmunjom Declaration last year, he said, what's more important than any other thing for now is to prepare for the fourth summit with North Korea, reaffirming its resolve to faithfully implement existing summit deals. So despite the ups and downs we've seen over the past year, it's fair to say that all of them signify progress being made on the president's peace drive on the Korean Peninsula.
Now, President Moon Jae-in has officially proposed another round of inter-Korean summit. What do you see the possibility of the talks taking place soon?
I mean, it is highly likely that the South Korean government will be pushing for another inter-Korean summit at an early date, given that President Moon has just wrapped up another meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump, trying to get those two leaders back on track for talks on the denuclearization. But just to give you a brief recap of what President Moon had said over the past couple of remarks at different events, it just clearly shows that President Moon's strong will in taking down the denuclearization drive is not changing a bit. Here are some of the latest remarks we pulled up from the president.
카자흐스탄은 자발적인 비핵화를 통해서 경제 성장을 이룬 그런 경험을 가지고 있기 때문에 우리 한반도의 비핵화 문제에 있어서 큰 영감을 주고 있습니다. 나는 지금까지 그랬듯이 또 한 번의 남북 정상회담이 더 큰 기회와 결과를 만들어내는 디딤돌이 되도록 최선의 노력을 다할 것입니다. 한반도의 평화는 남과 북을 넘어 동북아와 아세안, 유라시아를 포괄하는 새로운 경제 성장의 동력이 될 것입니다.
So, Talon, all in all, a clear depiction of the president's strong will to get the nuclear talks going again while pursuing for another inter-Korean summit in the near future. So, I mean, we better cross our fingers that we'll be seeing another inter-Korean summit in the near future in the weeks to come, as the Moon administration is pushing for, they've been holding different meetings and events to get North Korea to talk and get the regime involved in moving and making progress in the denuclearization process.
Well, we're seeing back-to-back summits this week between the leaders of the key regional players surrounding the Korean Peninsula. So we'll have to see how things unfold from this point on. Thank you so much, Taemin, for that comprehensive report.
Always a pleasure.
A year has gone by since the signing of the landmark Panmunjom Declaration. The leaders of the two Koreas have held 2 more rounds of talks since the Panmunjom summit amid continuing nuclear impasse. And our Kan Hyung-woo now sheds light on the possibility of a 4th round of inter-Korean summit and the possible agenda.
Although talks between Pyongyang and Washington have come to an apparent standstill, prospects seem brighter for a 4th inter-Korean summit. With South Korean President Moon Jae-in aiming to play a key role in bringing North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and U.S. President Trump together, Some experts say a meeting is likely to take place in May.
Chairman Kim asked President Moon for a meeting before the second Panmunjom summit last year. This time it's Kim's turn to answer the call from Moon. So I think the chances of another Moon-Kim summit in May are pretty high.
Some experts say that by Moon taking on the role of mediator, the chance for the resumption of talks between Pyongyang and Washington remains. However, others cite this exact reason as why another inter-Korean summit in the near future is unlikely.
Possibility for inter-Korean summit is low, in my opinion. North Korea has been very critical of South Korea. For example, Kim Jong-un demanded South Korea stop acting as a mediator between the North Korea and United States.
While Seoul may be eager to hold talks, Pyongyang seems set on strengthening diplomacy with its allies, holding a North Korea-Russia summit for the first time in 8 years. Eyes will remain on the Korean Peninsula in the coming months, where the stage could be set for a turning point in the denuclearization and peace process. 간영우, Arirang News.
Shifting gears now to South Korea's National Assembly, and 4 political parties have made headway in getting fast-track status for key reform bills. They have submitted all 4 bills they want to fast-track, including one on electoral reform, one to create an independent body to investigate corruption among government and public officials, and another to boost the investigative authority of the police. It came despite fierce resistance from the main opposition Liberty Korea Party, which is not part of the fast-track deal. Concerns are mounting over another possible clash tonight when the 4 parties try to convene parliamentary committees and approve the designations. They initially tried to fast-track some of the key bills today, but that was prevented by a physical standoff between the ruling and main opposition parties. The LKP claimed the 4 parties were using illegal means to get the bills fast-tracked to suit their political interests and vowed to resist until the end. The ruling Democratic Party condemned the Conservative Party for what they called illegal violence, saying they will sue those involved. The governor of South Korea's central bank has convened a meeting with the heads of the country's major commercial banks to discuss the seriousness of the economic situation here in Korea, following a GDP report that shocked even the most pessimistic analysts. Our Cha Sang-mi has the details.
Following the revelation that South Korea posted its worst ever quarterly GDP figures since the 2008 global financial crisis in the January to March period, Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol convened a hastily arranged meeting on Friday to discuss the financial situation with the heads of major banks. Lee said, quote, "There is a need to see the current economy situation in a serious manner and stressed that now is the time to seek policy solutions to reinvigorate corporate investment, the engine of economic growth." This comes after a striking on-quarter real GDP contraction of 0.3% in the first quarter. Exports also dropped 2.6% on-quarter, a sharper drop than the 1.5% decline in the fourth quarter of last year, mainly on decreases of electrical and electronic equipment exports. Citing slumping corporate investments for the reason for the decline, Governor Lee said investment sentiment has to be revived first in order to spark a recovery in economic growth. But he insisted the tough times won't continue for long, with government contributions and global economic conditions improving. Meanwhile, in a meeting with related deputy ministers on prices, the Ministry of Economy and Finance vowed to do its utmost to tackle low exports and investment through new economic policy directions in the second half of this year. The ministry added that Dubai oil prices, Korea's benchmark, rose to over $70 a barrel and said they will look into ways to respond to it. Cha Sang-mi, Arirang News.
In other news, China is hosting a forum on its ambitious Belt and Road project, the foreign policy initiative China says will build infrastructure around the world and promote global trade. Kim Hye-sung reports.
The second Belt and Road Forum has officially kicked off in Beijing. Nearly 40 heads of state and government and 5,000 representatives from 150 countries and 90 international organizations are attending the forum.
We held the first Belt and Road Forum for International Cooperation here 2 years ago, and blueprinted cooperation featuring policy, infrastructure, trade, financial, and people-to-people connectivity. And today, friends from across the world gather here again, and I look forward to working with all of you.
Known as the 21st Century Silk Road, the $1 trillion Belt and Road Initiative was unveiled by President Xi Jinping in 2013, aimed at boosting trade and connecting Asia, Europe, and Africa through railroads and maritime routes. The initiative covers over 70 countries, which together account for half of the world's population and a quarter of global GDP. Korea's Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi is also attending the forum and met with high-level Chinese government officials, including the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank chief, to boost economic cooperation. Also at the forum is Russian President Vladimir Putin, who said China's Belt and Road Initiative fits perfectly with the goals of the Russian-led Eurasian Economic Union to boost trade in the region. Putin held bilateral talks with Xi Jinping and discussed bilateral economic cooperation and North Korea-related issues. This came just after arriving from his summit with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un in Russia. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
President Moon came back earlier this week from 3 countries in Central Asia. Now that he's back, a special committee set up for his new Northern policy says it'll announce specific strategies for cooperation with the region by September. The committee said Friday that it'll come up with ways to boost ties with the 3 countries President Moon went to, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Kazakhstan. But no details yet. It said these are key regions for possible economic cooperation, such as in health and medical services. The Ministry of Gender, Equality and Family announced measures to strengthen the management and recruitment of state babysitters as part of efforts to reduce child abuse. Our Kim Mo-kyun has the story.
The government has revealed measures to shake up the hiring process of state babysitters, improve their training, and strengthen punishment for those found guilty of abuse. From May, applicants must take a personality and aptitude test, which will be evaluated by industry experts, including at least one psychology specialist. A standardized interview manual will also be adopted. The move comes in the aftermath of a recent incident involving a state nanny in Seoul's Kumcheongu district who abused a 14-month-old baby for 3 months. Previously, applicants just had to prove they had no mental health issues and a clean criminal record. The ministry will also improve educational seminars for existing babysitters.
This year, we will hold more preventive educational seminars for existing babysitters. And from next year, we will double training and supplementary education hours to 4 hours and 2 hours each. On-site lessons will be expanded from the current 10 to 20 hours, and the maximum number of sitters receiving a lesson will be reduced to 30 from the current 100.
Measures to punish those found guilty of abuse will also be strengthened. The suspension period of their permits will be extended to 2 years from the current 6 months, while those who are put on probation or have their cases dismissed will have their permits cancelled and cannot reapply for 5 years. The ministry will establish a total management system by the end of 2019 and create a mobile application that provides information on the babysitter and allows employers to better communicate with the authorities. Surprise inspections will also take place. In the meantime, the government will continue running its temporary Center for Child Abuse Reports and establish a permanent one by July. Kim Mo-kyun, Arirang News.
The Seoul Central District Court has upheld its ruling against BMW Korea for fabricating emissions tests. It confirmed a fine of about $12.5 million while upholding 10-month prison sentences for 6 employees. Also in today's ruling, the court decided to slightly reduce a fine against Mercedes-Benz Korea, which was found guilty of violating emissions-related certification procedures. The court cut the fine by roughly $85,000 to $2.3 million. The OECD claims robots will take over 14% of jobs worldwide in the next 20 years. In its report released Thursday, the bloc also said another 32% of jobs could be what it called radically transformed. While noting technological progress does create jobs, the OECD urged nations to adopt policies that protect workers whose jobs are under threat. The South Korean animated film Underdog has been selected to compete at one of the world's main animated film festivals. Organisers of the 2019 Annecy International Animation Film Festival announced that Underdog is among 8 films selected to compete for the Panmunjom Award in June. It's the first time that a Korean animation has been selected to compete at the French festival. Underdog tells the story of an abandoned dog and his friendship with other street dogs. This year's CJ Logistics Super Race Championship, one of the top motorsport events in Korea, will kick off tomorrow. The opening race is at Everland Speedway in Yongin, just south of Seoul. The championship will have a total of 9 rounds across the country over the next 6 months. That has been your 3-minute news flash.
Strong winds have developed along with rain, causing the temperature to drop to a single-digit reading in Seoul.
Not really my kind of weather on a Friday. Now let's get more details from our Michelle Park at the Weather Centre. Michelle, what's the latest?
Hi guys, now the rain isn't too bad. We've seen showers on and off throughout the day, but more rain is expected to fall throughout Friday night, especially along the East Coast and also the southern regions. And Saturday will be mild with lots of sunshine, and all that sun will bring the highs back into the double-digit readings. And at the same time, clouds will hover over in Beijing while Tokyo continues to be drenched with more rain. And due to the cold wind coming in from the northwest, it's going to be chilly morning tomorrow, towards low dipping down to 7 degrees Celsius, while Chuncheon drops down to 4. And the temperature will rebound into the afternoon. Now the nation's high will peak between 16 to 20 degrees, so it's expected to reach up to 17 degrees. A frequent rain pattern is expected for our 5-day outlook. Expect showers to be moderate with temperatures at seasonal levels. Now I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
Well, that will wrap it up for this edition of Arirang News. Thank you, as always, for watching.
News in depth is coming up shortly, so stay tuned.
South Korea's long-standing anti-abortion laws are set to be repealed after